Maybe you just need someone watching your back. Like a partner.
We've yet to see what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to look like post-Infinity War. How will Thanos' finger snap affect the tone of these movies? It's got to be different in Avengers 4, but we're not going to find out in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I'll tell you why, but first subscribe to Universe for more breakdowns and reviews of the stuff you love. Ant-Man and the Wasp actually takes place before the events of Avengers Infinity War. If you're hoping for some answers, that's going to be a little bit disappointing, but it also lets this movie have a lighter tone. Like the original, it's kind of a palate cleanser for the MCU. The first Ant-Man introduced Scott Lang along with Hank Pym and his daughter Hope Van Dyne. Ant-Man and the Wasp directly picks up their story following Scott's involvement in the plot of Civil War. He's had 2 years of house arrest and his sentence is almost up, but of course Hope drags him back into a life of illegal heroism in a plot to save her mother, Michelle Pfeiffer's Janet Van Dyne, from the quantum realm where she's been trapped for 30 years. There's a recurring source of tension in this movie where no matter how many zany adventures Scott Lang goes on, he keeps having to race back to his apartment and put his ankle bracelet back on whenever the FBI decides to check back in on him. It's a fun bit, but even more importantly, it kind of reminds me of an earlier age in the MCU where a hero's biggest concern could be staying out of trouble with the law and not 50% of the galaxy's population getting murdered. Being lighter in tone has other advantages too. Ant-Man and the Wasp isn't too concerned with practical questions like how Janet Van Dyne could possibly have survived in the quantum realm for 3 decades. The movie is full of pseudoscience mumbo-jumbo about things like entanglement and quantum tunnels. All that stuff gets a little bit exhausting, but the movie is also pretty self-aware about it. Like one time Scott literally asks them, "Do you guys just put the word quantum in front of everything to make it sound more scientific?" Which is actually a really good question. And this movie is a lot like the comics, so the answer is definitely yes. Ant-Man and the Wasp introduces a couple of new villains as well. Ghost stalks the heroes in the hopes of stealing their secret lab, and Hannah John Kamen's performance is more dramatic to fit the character than the rest of the movie is. Walton Goggins, on the other hand, does his typical hilariously kind of sleazy villain thing as Sonny Birch, a black market merchant who decides he wants the quantum tech for himself. Most important in this movie is the Wasp, Evangeline Lilly as Hope Van Dyne, and she completely owns this movie. Unsurprisingly, considering she has been training her whole life for this, she is a better Ant-Man than Ant-Man himself, which also kind of makes the last movie's plot that Hank needed to enlist this random criminal to do this thing instead of his daughter, who is obviously going to be better at. It's ridiculous. It makes the last movie seem even more ridiculous in retrospect. The original wasn't terrible by any means, and like the first Ant-Man, this movie also has really great fight choreography with lots of shrinking and growing used in creative ways. Some of the most fun sequences in this movie are car chases where one or more vehicles are constantly shrinking down to like Hot Wheels size and then back to normal, throwing off pursuers, causing general chaos. One of the best gags in the movie is Scott's suit is malfunctioning for a good chunk of it, and so he can't control when he's growing or shrinking. So he spends an entire sequence 3 feet tall at his daughter's middle school, running around with like a big hoodie on, trying to... I didn't mean to start laughing. It's really f***ing funny. But he winds up being 3 feet tall, but he still looks like a grown man, and he's like running around with a hoodie on, trying to... It's very good. His daughter is played again by Abby Ryder-Fortson, who is ridiculously charismatic. She's great. Michael Pena also returns as fan favorite character from the original Lewis. He has the same, like everybody's favorite joke from the original was his voiceover montage where the actors are acting it out and he's talking through their mouths and it's ridiculous. This time it's even crazier because he's like under the influence of this truth serum that just causes him to ramble about like everything from Scott's psychiatric health to his family's love of Morrissey. He's also more actively involved in the story this time, which is pure wish fulfillment for anyone who loved his character in the first movie, which is basically everyone who saw it. Here's what's good. Ant-Man and the Wasp is lighthearted and funny, it's self-aware about its sillier aspects, and it is honestly a much-needed palate cleanser after Avengers Infinity War. The action and the way the movie uses the size powers is really creative. There's a couple of really fun new villains, and Evangeline Lilly, of course, is phenomenal as the Wasp. I have a couple of smaller gripes. Some of the pseudoscience gobbledygook gets a little bit ridiculous. The whole premise of her being alive in the quantum realm for 30 years is never really satisfactorily explained. And if you are coming out of Avengers Infinity War hoping for some answers here, you're gonna be disappointed. The original Ant-Man was sandwiched right in between Avengers Age of Ultron and Captain America Civil War, two of the most dense and dour movies in the entire MCU. It is not a coincidence that the sequel is coming out right after Avengers Infinity War. It is meant to be a lighthearted palate cleanser that's just not as serious as some of the other MCU movies. And even though it doesn't answer a lot of the questions that I have right now about the MCU in general and the future, I think it does its job well, and it's a distraction that I personally welcome. Thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you think of Ant-Man and the Wasp. Hit me up on Twitter, I'm at Rogue Cheddar, and you have to let me know what you think of this movie's stinger. Later.